Accessibility, entering music. In this lesson, we're going to learn the basics of entering music into your score using your keyboard and screen reader. And in the process, we'll also learn a bit about navigating your score to read the contents of the score. And I'm going to be using the score that we created as part of the score setup lesson. But I don't want to depend on remembering the details of what I set up. I want to first start off by doing a little navigation here to make sure I understand what we are starting off with here. So when you've created a new score or when you've loaded a score, you might want to take a quick look around and make sure you understand what's going on. Now, normally when you first create a score, what is selected is the bar line at the beginning of the first staff of that score. But that is not, in fact, the first thing in your score. The title and composer information is going to precede that. So I want to actually do a complete traversal of the beginning of this score to make sure we understand things. The commands that we're going to use to navigate through our score is going to be Alt left and Alt right. These commands are going to move through your score one element at a time, and it's going to navigate through pretty much every single element of your score. And the reason it's Alt left or Alt right, and on a Mac I believe that's Option left and Option right, as opposed to left and right, is that left and right by themselves are just going to move through notes and rests. And this can be very efficient during note input, but if we want to really understand what's going on in the score, we're going to need to hear the other markings read as well. And so we're going to use Alt left and Alt right. So I'm going to just make sure I get all the way to the beginning of the score by using Alt left.
Composer Mark Sabatella, edit Mark Sabatella.
So we have my name as the composer. That's what I entered. Alt left again.
Title my song, edit my song.
So we have the title, my song. Alt left again.
Vertical frame, title my song, composer Mark Sabatella.
And so it's telling me there's a vertical frame. This is a container that we add in MuseScore that is you can add text to. And when you specify the title and composer, this goes to a vertical frame at the beginning of my score. I'm going to hit Alt left again. Nothing happened because this is literally the first element of the score. So I want to get back now to where the music is, so I'm going to hit Alt right a few times to get back.
Title my song, composer Mark Sabatella. Staff 1, flute, bar line, single bar line, measure 1, beat 1.
Great. So staff 1, flute. And it selects the bar line there at the beginning of the staff. So we're on the flute staff, and let me start moving through the flute staff so we can understand some things about what are here. I'm going to hit Alt right again.
Treble clef, measure 1, beat 1.
Starts with a clef. Alt right again.
Key signature E flat major, C minor, measure 1, beat 1.
Alt right again.
Time signature 6/8 time, measure 1, beat 1.
And Alt right again.
Rest quarter, measure 1, beat 1, tempo equals 180.
So notice it says rest quarter. There is a quarter rest here on beat 1. And then it also read the tempo of 180. And this is because that tempo marking, like most text in MuseScore, other than the title, is attached to specific notes or rests in your score. So whenever you navigate to a note or a rest, it's going to read any text or articulations or other elements that are attached to that note. It reads them, but we still have just the note or rest itself is what's selected. If I now hit Alt right, it's actually going to select the tempo marking.
Tempo equals 180, measure 1, beat 1, edit equals 180.
So I've got my tempo marking selected. Now when I hit Alt right, it's going to move on.
Rest 8th, measure 1, beat 3.
So it's beat 3 of this measure. Remember, it was a 6/8 measure, and we've got an 8th rest on beat 3. Let me hit Alt right again.
Bar line, single bar line, measure 2, beat 1.
So we've reached the bar line already after only 3 beats worth of that 6/8 measure. And that's because, in fact, this is a pickup measure. You might remember that we created it that way. We asked for 3/8 notes worth of pickup, and that's what we got. So now we've reached the bar line at the end of bar 1, and we're ready to enter bar 2. Let me hit Alt-Right again.
Rest measure, measure 2 beat 1.
So rest measure, meaning a measure rest, this is a symbol that's used to indicate this measure is essentially empty. It's a rest that takes the full length of the measure regardless of the time signature. So we've got our measure rest in bar 2. Let me hit Alt-Right again.
Bar line single bar line, measure 3 beat 1.
So now we've reached a bar line going into measure 3. Hit Alt-Right again.
Rest measure, measure 3 beat 1.
Measure 3 just has a rest, and it's nothing but rest from here on out, right? Because we just created this score. So it's nothing but rests and bar lines. So now I'm ready to go back to the beginning and start entering some notes here. So to get back to the beginning, I want to tell you about another shortcut that's going to be useful, and that's Control Left and Control Right. On a Mac, it's Command Left and Command Right. This is going to move a full measure at a time. So Control Left.
Rest measure, measure 2 beat 1.
That's now I'm in measure 2. Control Left again.
Rest quarter, measure 1 beat 1 tempo equals 180.
So now I'm in measure 1, which is where I want to be, the start of the piece. A word about the measure numbering. MuseScore, when it reads you measure numbers, and actually for pretty much any internal commands within measure within MuseScore that reference measure numbers, is using kind of an absolute measure numbering system starting at 1. But the printed measure numbers in the score don't necessarily correspond to that because, for instance, that pickup measure is not actually numbered. So there won't be a number 1 appearing above that pickup measure if you have measure numbers enabled. Similarly, if you have a first and second ending, there's commands that will allow you to kind of pause the measure numbering there. And the measure numberings that appear in the score won't necessarily always reflect the measure numbering read to you by the screen reader. The screen reader is going to read the measure numbers in absolute order like that. So starting with 1. So we're in measure 1, and I'm ready to start entering some notes. To enter notes into MuseScore, we're going to begin by entering note input mode by pressing the key N.
N. Note input mode, rest quarter, measure 1 beat 1 tempo equals 180.
So I am now ready to start entering some notes. Notice that it read that we're in note input mode, and it read the current contents of where I'm at, where the cursor is right now. It read that quarter rest. And MuseScore is always in what we might refer to as replace or overwrite mode, in that when we enter notes, it's going to replace whatever was there before. So whether there was a rest there before or a note there before, when we start entering notes, it's just going to replace what was there. And this is exactly what I want here. So I want to enter some eighth notes here. So I'm going to want to know how to enter notes. And the way we do this is we first select a duration, and then we enter a pitch. And we're going to use numbers for duration and letters for pitch. So the numbers 4, 5, and 6, like the home row, the middle row of a numeric keypad, that 4, 5, and 6 is going to correspond to eighth, quarter, and half, which are usually the most commonly used note durations. 4, 5, and 6 for eighth, quarter, and half. Shorter note durations will be smaller numbers. Longer durations will be larger numbers. 4, 5, and 6, eighth, quarter, half. If I want eighth notes, it's going to be 4, so I'll type 4.
4.
And now I can start typing in some notes, just using letter names. So the first thing I'm going to do is type B.
B. Note B flat 4/8. Measure 1 beat 1 tempo equals 180.
I typed a B, but you may have heard there it entered a B flat, and that's because our key signature was the key of E flat, and the key of E flat has B flat right there in the key signature. So when I typed a B, I got a B flat. It's displaying just as a B, exactly as it should be. So next, because the eighth note was already selected, if I want to enter some more eighth notes, I don't have to select the eighth note. I can just type some more note names. So I'll type C.
C. Note C 5/8. measure 1 beat 2.
And next, I'll enter a D.
D, note D5/8, measure 1 beat 3.
So I've entered 3/8 notes. I'm done with the pickup measure. The cursor has already moved on to the next measure. I don't have to do anything special to move to the next measure. I just got to enter a note. But I feel like I'm done with eighth notes. Let's enter a dotted quarter since we're in 6/8. I'm going to type 5 for quarter. Remember 4, 5, 6, eighth quarter, half. So 5 is the quarter.
5.
And then to enter the dot, I'm going to type the actual period on my keyboard.
Dot.
So I've selected my duration, dotted quarter, and now I can type E to get my E flat.
E, note E flat 5 dotted quarter, measure 2 beat 1.
So let's say that I want to enter now a G below that. I want to enter G4. If I type G right now,
G, note G5 dotted quarter, measure 2 beat 4.
MuseScore enters a G, but it entered it above the E flat. It entered it as G5. That's because when you first enter a note, MuseScore is going to enter it in the closest octave to the note you most recently entered. In this case, that's not what I want. I want the G below that E flat. So I'm going to move that note down an octave with the shortcut Control down.
Note G4 dotted quarter, measure 2 beat 4.
So now that I have moved that note down an octave, it's where I want Control down to go down, Control up to go up, Command down, Command up on Mac. Now I'm ready. I've entered a dotted quarter, E flat, dotted quarter, G. I'm done with the second measure. Let's go ahead and into the third measure, and let's just try a couple of other things. Like, for instance, we haven't looked at accidentals. Let's enter an accidental. The shortcuts for the accidentals are minus for flat, plus for sharp, and equals for natural. So let's say that I want to enter an F sharp right now. And let's say I want it to be an eighth note. I can type 4 for eighth note.
4.
And then plus for the sharp.
Plus.
And I've now kind of pre-selected eighth note and pre-selected the sharp. I haven't entered a note yet. Now, if I type an F.
F, note F sharp 4/8, measure 3 beat 1 accidental sharp.
I get the actual F sharp because I pre-selected that accidental. Now if I enter a G right now, the accidental has cleared itself. So if I type G,
G, note G 4/8, measure 3 beat 2.
I just get the G. And if I type an A,
note a flat 4/8, measure 3 beat 3.
I've now entered 3/8 notes here. Now let's say for the next thing that I enter, I want to enter a chord. I want to enter 2 notes at the same time. The way I'm going to do this is bottom up. If I want to enter a G and a B flat at the same time, I'm first going to enter the G. And so let me change to dotted quarter. So I'll type 5 period.
5, dot.
And now I'm going to enter that G and the B flat. I'll first enter the G.
G, note G4 dotted quarter, measure 3 beat 4.
So I've got that G entered onto beat 4. If I want to add a B flat to form a chord, I'm going to type Shift B.
B, note B flat 4 dotted quarter, measure 3 beat 4.
So when I typed Shift B, it added the B flat to the chord, and you heard it play both notes together, and you heard it read that it's still on beat 4. So now I'm ready to move ahead, and the cursor is still ready. It's moved ahead. It's ready for me to enter more notes. If I now type an E flat right now.
E, note E flat 4 dotted quarter, measure 4 beat 1.
It has already moved into measure 4. If I now want to move, I'll move it up an octave because I feel like that's going to sound nice.
Note E flat 5 dotted quarter, measure 4 beat 1.
Let's say next I want to enter a rest. I'm not going to show you how to enter every single type of notation, but I feel like by entering notes, by entering accidentals, chords, and rests, we've really covered a lot in this lesson. So I'm going to enter a rest by pressing first a duration. So I'll enter a dotted quarter rest. So 5 period.
Dot.
So I've got my dotted quarter duration selected. It might have already been selected. I kind of forgot, but it's selected now. To enter a rest, I'm going to type 0. To enter a note, we type its letter name. To enter a rest, you type 0.
0. Rest dotted quarter, measure 4 beat 4.
And so that's how we can enter rests. Now, so far, I've just been on the flute staff. We haven't really explored the rest of what's in this score, and I feel like I probably want to do that before we move on. So I'm going to move to the staff below here by pressing Alt down. Alt left and right are moving left and right through the score. Alt down is going to move down through the score.
Staff 2, trumpet in B flat, rest measure, measure 4 beat 1.
So I'm on a trumpet staff, staff 2. Let me hit Alt down again.
Staff 3, trombone, rest measure, measure 4 beat 1.
All right, staff 3's trombone. Let me hit Alt down again. Nothing happened because there's no more staves. So I've got 3 staves, flute, trumpet, and trombone. I want to move back towards the beginning and maybe just enter a couple notes onto these staves to talk about a couple other issues here. So I'm going to hit Control left.
Rest measure, measure 3 beat 1.
And again.
Rest measure, measure 2 beat 1.
Notice that while we're on any given staff, it's not reading the staff name every time, but when you change staves, it will read the name. So I'm still on the trombone staff here. I want to enter a dotted half note here, all right? I just want to get something onto every staff. I'm going to enter 6 dot for
6,
dotted half note.
Dot.
And then I can type in E.
E. Note E flat 3 dotted half. Measure 2 beat 1.
Now I'm going to hit Alt up to go back up to the trumpet staff.
Staff 2, trumpet in B flat, rest measure, measure 2 beat 1.
So my piece is in E flat, and I feel like it might sound really nice if the trumpet had as its first note a G. So let me enter a dotted quarter note G. 5 dot, and I'm going to type a G.
G, note G4, sounding as F4, dotted quarter, measure 2 beat 1.
So, you catch what happened here? Maybe you were already anticipating that. Trumpet in B flat. This is a transposing instrument. And when it says it's a G sounding as F, it's not lying. On trumpet, if you play a notated G, what is sounding is an F. So in order to get the sound of a G, I actually want to enter an A. So if transposing instruments are new to you, you get a nice little learning curve about how these work. But once you're done learning about that, you can come back here and learn that if you want to hear a G, you want to enter an A. So I'm going to undo that. I'm actually just going to press backspace.
Blank. Rest dotted quarter. Measure 2 beat 1.
Backspace essentially did an undo. It just deleted the measure, the note before it. So I'm back at the beginning of the measure. Now I'm going to enter an A.
A. Note A4, sounding as G4, dotted quarter, measure 2 beat 1.
So now we have the note that I actually wanted, and then the next note that I want is an F, sounding as E flat.
F. Note F4, sounding as E flat 4, dotted quarter, measure 2 beat 4.
So we've looked at entering notes, selecting their duration. We've looked at changing octaves. We've looked at adding accidentals. We've looked at creating chords, entering rests. We've looked at moving between staves. And we've looked a little bit at transposition. I do want to make one observation, since transposing instruments are kind of a thing, and I entered trumpet in B flat, so I made my bed, now I'm going to lie in it. I want to show you how to get this score into concert pitch, so we don't have to always be thinking about transposition anymore. What I want to do is I want to get down to the status bar at the bottom of the screen and enable concert pitch. So I'm going to press Tab, and that's going to take me down to the status bar.
Workspace, accessibility button.
So now I am in the status bar at the bottom, and I'm going to hit the right arrow.
Concert pitch checkbox not checked.
That's the guy I want. I want to check that thing by pressing space.
Space.
So it is checked now. If in doubt, I'm going to hit the left arrow and the right arrow to come back to it.
Workspace, Accessibility, concert pitch checkbox checked.
Now it's checked, right? So Shift Tab to get back to the score.
Staff 2, trumpet in B flat, note E flat 4 dotted quarter, measure 2 beat 4.
Hear it now, it just read E flat. It didn't read F, sounding as E flat. So it's actually now going to allow you to enter pitches as you want them. So if I want a D right now that actually sounds like a D, I can type 4 for eighth note,
4.
and then type my D.
My song window, note D 4 eighth, measure 3 beat 1.
And I got the D. So that's an actual D, sounding as D. And then if I then want to turn concert pitch off to see what these pitches are, as they would need to be printed, MuseScore will automatically do that for you, though, when you generate parts later. So this has been kind of a big tour of a lot of things about entering notes into MuseScore, and I encourage you to play around and just experiment, and then you can use the cursor keys. Like now I can just cursor, I'll just use left.
Blank.
And it says blank because the cursor had already kind of moved ahead, and now it's moved back, but it's back onto that same D that it had already read, so it doesn't read it again. I'll press left again.
Note E flat 4 dotted quarter, measure 2 beat 4.
And left again.
Note G 4 dotted quarter, measure 2 beat 1.
And if I hit Alt up.
Staff 1, flute, note E flat 5 dotted quarter, measure 2 beat 1.
And so on. So you can, kind of go through your whole score and read all the notes and enter notes onto any staff you want. And that's kind of the basics of note input in MuseScore.